Hi there, Year 4. It's Monday and it's lesson 1 of this week's English lessons. Today is going to be slightly different because we're starting the week with work on reading, and we're going to be reading some non-fiction today, and we're going to be talking about how to apply ourselves to comprehension questions. So we are going to be looking at reading and reading text and reading for information and looking at the way we answer questions. I'm going to introduce something you may have seen before, which is called Reading Cafe. It's not a real cafe, but it's all about what we use, the skills we use when we're reading. The cafe each letter starts explaining an aspect of reading. The C is for comprehension, which we're going to focus in on today, is that reading for information, that you understand what you read. Then the A in the cafe is accuracy, that you read the words carefully and correctly. The F is for fluency, that you read accurately with expression, nice flow of reading. And the E stands for expanding the vocabulary, and that is that you're introduced to new words in your reading, that you're challenged to increase your vocabulary. And this will help you with not just your reading, but it will also help you with your writing. So we know that reading is about the words, making sense of what is written. The comprehension shows that you understand what you've read. The fluency is the flow of reading. One thing I think with reading is reading aloud is really good for you, even if you think you're really good at reading. What I would like you to do is when you're reading, imagine you're reading to a younger child. If you've got a brother or sister, then you can do this. But if you haven't, imagine you're reading to an audience. It will help you with your intonation, and it will help you with your character and voice, and how you can change the way you read, depending on what's going on in the story or the non-fiction and how you want to present that. It's a really good way of building your confidence reading aloud, and it will help you however old you are. We all make mistakes in reading, and it's good to reread to check for those mistakes. The other aspect is talking about what you've read. If it's a story, talking about the characters or the plot. And if it's a non-fiction text, talking about what you've learned from that and what is new to you. The more you read, the better your vocabulary will be. But also, you've come to an age now where some of you might think you don't need to be read to. There's a lovely picture here of a mum reading to a daughter there, or an older child reading to a younger child. And actually, what research has shown is that children who continue to be read to have such a wide vocabulary, and actually they're better at talking about what they've read. So if you can get a grown-up to read to you, that's a really good thing. Don't think that you're too old for it, because you're never too old. I like being read to. So today we're focusing on some skills here. We're focusing on reading easily and fluently with good understanding. We're trying to build the habit of reading often and widely. So today's text is not the sort of thing you would normally pick up. And we've done that deliberately because we want you to access something slightly different. Also, we want you to acquire this wide vocabulary. And by the end of today, I know you will have come across some words that are new to you, and also will help you have that kind of range of vocabulary that you can go to. Okay, so today we're going to be reading about the President of the United States, the new president, and you might know from seeing on TV that he's called Joe Biden. We're also going to be reading next time about Kamala Harris, who is the Vice President. She's the new Vice President. And we're going to link that with some work that we did some time ago on Ruby Bridges. I'll leave that with you and see if you can remember what that was that we learned about some time ago. We're going to aim today to read through with fluency, think about the questions we've read, and then answer some questions. Think about what we've read, and answer some questions. And the focus today will be about the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Before we start, I want us to think about what will happen at the end of the reading. We're going to be looking at some different kinds of questions, and I want us just to go through those so that they're not new to us when we get to them. You will have a range of questions to show that you've got good comprehension. The first sort is multiple choice here. Multiple choice where there are several answers given and you choose the best fit. And this is what they might look like. Okay, in what year was Joe Biden born? Tick 1. And you've got some range of different answers and you're going to have to choose. Okay, that's the first kind of question. I'll just put that over there. The second kind of question is retrieval. So you're looking at exact wording in the text and answering questions, or you might be asked to find a particular word and answer it. This is really slightly different sort of question. Let's just have a look. This is a sort of question here we've got where you've got not a multiple choice, but you've got to put things in order. So you've got to think about the chronology, that's the sequence of events in the texts. Also, you've got, again, this one. Look at the paragraph beginning, Joe Biden had to deal with tragedy. Find and copy one word that means the same as bravery. That's where you've got to look very specifically in the text and look for a specific word that will help you. And this will show, this is about vocabulary, having new words, encouraging you to understand new words and also what the meanings of those new words. Giving an answer based on your reading of the whole text and giving your opinion. This is where you have a different kind of question. You haven't got to pick out an answer. You've got to have thought about the whole text and what you've learned from it. And that sort of question is sometimes called inferred meaning, where it's not direct and it's not obvious. You've got to really think about it. I'm just going to show you one question that's a little bit like that. Let's go through these questions. We will come to these later, but I wanted to have a little idea before we go. Who was the president when Joe Biden was vice president? That's where you've got to search for the answer and it will be in the text. Then this one, question number 7. Think of a word that you think best describes Joe Biden. Explain why you've chosen that word. Now that word might come in the text. You might be able to lift it from the text. Or it might need to be a word that you think would best describe him. So this is how we're going to go through thinking about the sort of questions we're going to ask. If we look at question 8, do you think Joe Biden is a hard worker? Now this is a tricky one. It says, find 2 pieces of evidence in the text to support your answer. Now, it means it won't say in the text, Joe Biden is a hard worker because. No, that would be literal. You would pick that out. You've got to read the whole text and then look for evidence that gives you that feeling. You might think, no, overall, I think Joe Biden isn't a hard worker because I've read in the text X, Y, and Z. Or you might think, yes, I do think Joe Biden is a hard worker because in the text I read overall that he did this and that and the other. Do you see? So we're going to go on to do some reading now, and we'll come back to these kind of questions at the end. And I will leave you on Google Classroom another reading activity all about Joe Biden with different questions. Today we're going to read together, or you can stop the video before we read and have a read of it on your own and then forward the bit where I read with you. Okay? So before we start reading, we're going to come across some words. There may be some others that we have never seen before. And these words are in what's called a glossary. And you know from non-fiction books that glossaries usually have words in them that are unusual, with an explanation, a definition. I quite often talk about definitions in phonics. So there are some definitions here of what these words mean, and they will help us make sense of the text. So some vocabulary here is the word inaugurated. Now, that's a very long word. Inaugurated. Now that's unusual. It means this: sworn into office at a special ceremony to mark the start of a new president. Now, Joe Biden had his inauguration a couple of weeks ago. It was on the television. He had to stand at a sort of post, put his hand on a Bible and say that he would promise to look after the American people. He was then saying, I am going to be president and this is what I promise to do. And where all the people were there having fun and seeing him do that, that was called the ceremony. But the point where he said, I am going to be president and I promise to look after the people of America, that was his inauguration, where he was sworn into office. And when it says sworn, it means he said, I promise to. Okay? So inaugurated will come up in the text. Then this word, adversity. Adversity means a difficult or unpleasant situation. Adversity, adverse means the opposite, doesn't it? So it actually means coming against difficult, tricky, opposite things to what you hope for and getting over them. Okay? Senator is our final word in our glossary. Now, senator is a little bit like we have members of parliament or MPs. It's a member of the United States Senate who passes laws for their country. So in England, we have the Houses of Parliament and we have members of Parliament or MPs who represent us and go to the Parliament and make laws, okay, alongside the government. So in America, the equivalent is the senator, okay? So that is what we're going to come across, these three words. We might come across a few more that we're not sure about, but I'll try and help you with those. We're now going to read through this text. Let's start. You can stop the video at any point and read it for yourself, but I thought it would be a good thing to do to go through it with you. Okay, Joe Biden, and there's a picture of him. Joe Biden is a politician and president-elect of the United States. He is due to be inaugurated as the 46th president on the 20th of January 2021. He served as the 47th vice president to Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017. His early life. He was born on the 20th of November 1942 in Pennsylvania, but moved to Delaware when he was still young. His parents were very hardworking and taught him to be tough and to persevere in life. As a child, Joe Biden had a stammer and was sometimes teased. To manage his stammer, he learned poetry and recited it in front of the mirror. Okay, now this section talks about Joe Biden being what's called president-elect. We've passed the 20th of January 2021, so we now know he is the 46th president. But for this text, this is what was written before then. There's a word here that you may not have come across. Pennsylvania, Delaware. These are two places, capital P and capital D, in America. They're cities or towns in America. And there's another word here, stammer. That means that when he spoke, he couldn't always get his words out very clearly. And so that made him be teased, and which wasn't very kind. And he did this thing. To recite poetry means to talk, to say poems from your memory. You've done that when you did your poems all about, I think, your Revolting Rhymes poems. You were reciting poems. Let's move on to the next bit. Again, you stop the video and read it yourself if you want to. Let's try and read this. After attending school, he earned a place at the prestigious Archmere Academy. To help pay for his tuition, Joe Biden cleaned the windows and weeded the gardens. He went on to the University of Delaware. After his graduation in 1965, Joe Biden studied law at Syracuse University Law School. Career. In 1971, Joe Biden started his own law firm. he became interested in politics and joined the Democratic Party. In 1972, he ran for the United States Senate, and he became the 5th youngest US senator in the nation's history. He went on to serve in the Senate until 2009. Okay, so there are a few words there that you might be struggling with, that might be new. It says tuition. So in America, if you go to certain schools, you have to pay. The tuition is what means the teaching. And so he had to pay for that. He went to university and he studied law. Career, this means his job, his working life. In 1971, he became a member of the Democratic Party. So that is a political party in America. And you remember that word? Senator. The Senate is it's a bit like our Houses of Parliament. And so senator means he was like the equivalent of an MP. Okay, so we've got a bit more information of Joe Biden here. Lots of things. I wonder if you're picking up some answers to some of the questions we shared at the beginning. Again, you can pause the video in the next section or wait and read it with me. Family life. Joe Biden has had to deal with tragedy in his life. In 1972, his wife and young daughter were killed in a car crash. His 2 sons were badly injured. Joe Biden felt like giving up, but found the courage to overcome this adversity. He married again in 1977 and had another daughter. Unfortunately, there was more sadness to come when in 2015, Joe Biden's eldest son died. Once again, despite his grief and sadness, he continued to think of the people he served. Okay, poor Joe. He sounds like he's had a bit of sad things happening in his life. So again, we have this word that we had in our glossary, adversity. And we had another one, tragedy. Tragedy is when lots of bad things happen. Okay, we've got this word here, which was grief. Grief is what you feel when somebody dies. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of information there all about Joe's family life, that he's had to overcome adversity. Let's have a look at the next section again. Pause it and read it yourself or read it with me. Becoming president. Joe Biden first decided to run for the US presidency in the 1988 election, but later dropped out of the election. In 2008, Joe Biden made his second bid to become president. He was unsuccessful, but he was chosen as the 47th vice president when Barack Obama became president of the United States in 2009. In 2020, Joe Biden stood as the Democratic candidate against Donald Trump and received a record number of votes. At 78, he will be the oldest president to be sworn into office. Did you know? In America, there are 2 main political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. Looking at this text, we know that he was the 47th vice president to Barack Obama. And we also know that he decided to become president, or wanted to become president, in 1988. That's quite a long time ago. But he dropped out. Also in 2020, he stood again against Donald Trump and he was voted in. So we know it says he will be the oldest president. In fact, he is now because he's already president. And there are 2 political parties in America, the Democrats, which is what Joe Biden is, and Republicans, which is what Donald Trump was. Okay, So now we've read quite a lot of information about him. You can go back and have a look at the text whenever you want, but let's try and work out if we could answer these questions together. So, who remembers, in what year was Joe Biden born? 2020, 1942, 1971, 2008. I think we remember from the beginning of the text that he was born in, yes, you're right, 1942. And for that kind of answer, you tick. What did Joe Biden work as before he became senator? Let's have a look. This is before he became senator, so this was early on. Was he a firefighter? No. Was he a doctor? Don't think so. He became vice president, but was he a lawyer before he was a vice president? Yes, he was. So there are two answers there that are correct. He did become vice president, but before he became a senator, he was a lawyer. Do you remember? He went to Syracuse University to learn to be a lawyer. So I'm looking at my questions and I'm making sure that I unpick what I've actually got to do. He did become a vice president, but not before he became a senator. Okay, let's look at the next question. Now let's work it out. With this question, you've got to put, number the events from 1 to 4 to show the order in which they happened. It's always important to read the questions, the whole thing. He became the 47th vice president. Joe Biden's eldest son died. He graduated from Delaware University. Joe Biden studied law at Syracuse University Law School. Let's just think of the order these happened. Let's think. The first thing that happened was he went to the university. The second thing that happened was he studied law. The third thing that happened was, yes, his son died. And then just after that, he became vice president. I think that's right. But check to make sure I made no mistakes. The next question says, what political party does Joe Biden belong to? Now it says the Conservatives, the Democrats, the Senate, or the Republicans. Well, we know that he was a member of the Senate, but that's not a political party. Can you remember what we learned? The two political parties in America are the Democrats and the Republicans. So which one is he? Yes, you're right. He's a Democrat. Now, this is a nice one. Look at the paragraph beginning, Joe Biden has to deal with tragedy. Find and copy the word that means the same as bravery. Now, we're going to go back and look at that because it's asking something very specific. Let's have a look. So, Joe Biden has to deal with tragedy. This was the bit it said to look for. We're looking for the same word that might mean bravery. Just let's look at this paragraph because that is the one the question asks us to check. So, let's read it again. Which word do you think here means the same as bravery? Joe Biden has had to deal with tragedy in his life. Okay, in 1972, his wife and young daughter were killed in a car crash. His two sons were badly injured. Joe Biden felt like giving up, but found the courage to overcome this adversity. If I change the word to bravery, would it make sense? Or brave? Joe Biden felt like giving up, but found the bravery to overcome this adversity. I think that would sort of fit, wouldn't it? So the word that we're looking for there is courage. So here we would write, oh, it's quite tricky with a mouse to write, but there we are. So write courage. Okay, the last bit. Who was the president when Joe Biden was vice president? Can you remember? He is capital B and his initials O. Barack Obama. Okay, this one is asking you something. So this was oh, I've got to just check I've spelt that right, but you need to just check yourself. So that's Barack Obama. Question 7. Think of a word that best describes Joe Biden. Now, when I find that word in the text, no, I've got to think about a word that I think fits. Now, I'm not going to give you that, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I think I would say Joe Biden is a trier. Do you know what I mean by that? So my might word would be a trier because he kept trying until he never gave up. Is there a better word than trier for that? Good vocabulary. Think of a word that describes Joe Biden and explain why I've chosen that word. So I might choose a different word. I might say I think he is brave because or courageous because he keeps going. Are there any other words? You might describe clever. Is he clever? Well, he went to university, he trained to be a lawyer, and then he's done all these different jobs. Maybe. You decide. Do you think, for question 8, do you think that Joe Biden is a hard worker? Find 2 pieces of evidence to support your answer. Well, I think he is a hard worker because I read that he has tried hard to do things for the people, and also he tried to be president before and he pulled out, but then he didn't give up, he came back. Maybe those would be my 2 pieces of evidence. You need to look in the text really, really carefully. Oh, there's another bit of information why I know he's a hard worker. Because when he went to college, what did he do in order to find he could have the money to pay for his tuition? Maybe that would be another piece of evidence. Can you see how we're building up vocabulary? We're building up our understanding of what we've read, and we're learning to find evidence from the text to support our answers. I want you to have a go. On Google Classroom, there are some things to do. I've left 2 PowerPoints there for you, which are about being President of the United States and what it means. There's also a separate PowerPoint all about Joe Biden, and they're optional. You can read those. They're quite useful bits of information to give you background on the information. But there are 3 non-fiction challenges, and you choose the one you would prefer. You can either read them on Google Classroom or print them off, or you can come back and have another go at this if you want. There's also an extension task. So choose your Google Classroom reading and have a go at that. And the extension task is, see if you can write me a fact sheet about Joe Biden from all the information either we've read together or from your own reading comprehension. And have a go and see how you get on. Don't worry if you find that there are some questions you can't answer, but let me know on Google Classroom which sort of questions you found tricky, because we can come back to them next week. I hope you enjoy doing this task, learning more about the world around you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.